Hi everyone, welcome to my first declutter series of 2023. This is going to be a 3 or 4 part series. Today I'm going to be decluttering some complexion products and then I'll break it down into lips and eyes as well, and possibly 2 categories for the lips. The way that I do my declutters is when I realize that I'm not going to be reaching for a product over the other ones I have, I put it into the bottom drawer of my IKEA Alex storage unit. Storage unit? Cabinet drawer thing? I can't remember what you call it. Anyways, over the course of several months, I have put products into this drawer and now I'm ready to declutter them. I already have an Instagram follower who reached out who's going to be receiving all of these products. And if there are any left over that she doesn't want, I will make sure to do a giveaway on my Instagram. So be sure to follow State of Kate. First up, I have this Makeup Forever palette and it is their HD Skin all-in-one face palette. And this is in the lightest shade. I really enjoyed this, but I was honest when I got it and I just knew that I wasn't going to reach for it over my other products. Because this does have a very dewy finish, what happens is it just fades so incredibly fast on my skin. So because this is in such good condition, I'm just going to clean up the edges and then pass this along to the content creator that I mentioned. This just really would be more suited for someone who has drier skin, or someone who just doesn't have combo skin, or someone who appreciates a dewier finish in a product. As you can see, it's really, really wet looking as a cream. It does look really beautiful on the skin. It just looks like your skin, but better. And so it's a stunning kind of cream formula. And I want to swatch more of it for you, but for whoever is going to be receiving this, I don't want to mess it up too badly, you know? So this is what the 2 blush colors look like. You have a light pink that's a little cooler, and then you have a kind of light coral. And again, these are very dewy, and I just felt like they were maybe a little bit too sheer and too dewy for my preferences. So I'm going to pass this along. Next up, we have the Charlotte Tilbury Beautiful Skin Concealer. This was a little Sephora point perk that I got in the shade For Fair. I actually really loved this formula, which was funny because a lot of people didn't like this. I think people said that it felt kind of like cakey, looked a little bit sparkly under the eyes. People said that it felt really thick to them. I haven't reached for this though because this color is just way too light for me, and my hands are actually a few shades lighter than my face. So as you can see, they just really wouldn't work under my eyes. I do prefer a concealer that matches my face. I actually really love thicker concealer formulas because I feel like they just act like an eye cream. And inevitably, anytime I try a really, really thin, serum-y concealer that's super blendable and spreadable, I feel like it just really settles into my lines. And so I really do prefer a thicker kind of cream concealer product like this. I didn't spend any money on this, so I'm not sad about passing it on. I did an ad with Flower Beauty on Instagram recently, and they sent me a whole bunch of their products. Unfortunately, I just couldn't find a perfect shade match for any of the complexion products. So for this foundation, which is really a skin tint, or for their concealer, everything was either way too light for me or way too yellow. So this is Porcelain L1. You can see it really has a serum-y texture that's super runny. This is Ivory L2, which is my best match, but still a bit too light for me. And Nude L3 is much too yellow for me. This is what the consistency looks like. Very much a serum consistency. And interestingly, I really don't like serum foundations. The Tarte C1, you know, the Fenty Ease Drops are a couple that come to mind. I always find that if you look here, see how it kind of is emphasizing all of the little hairs on my skin? I just feel like that's what serum foundations do on my face. Surprisingly, this is the only serum foundation that didn't seem to do that once it was actually on my face, not just on the back of my hand. But you know, for me, it's not a perfect shade match, and I do prefer something that's a little less dewy that has more coverage. So I'm gonna pass these on. I received this Huda Beauty concealer. It is the Beauty Filter Luminous Matte Concealer in Coconut Flakes 2.7N. I really liked this formula. I thought it was beautiful. It wasn't too matte. I don't really agree that it's full coverage just compared to a lot of other concealers I own, but I would say it's a solid medium that's a little buildable if you build up on it. But unfortunately, because it does have more coverage, I really just wasn't able to find a shade match for myself, and I know a lot of you have said that as well. You can definitely see that it's a little bit yellow on my hand, but it's really, really light under my eyes. Again, my hand is lighter than my face. So while I thought this was a really nice formula, especially as you see me blending it in, some of that initial dewiness goes away. You can see that it really does set down to more of a luminous matte finish. It feels creamy, but it still has somewhat of like a softness or a blurred effect to it that I associate with a matte formula. Really like this formula, but if they had had some cool pink undertones in the shade range, then I think I would have really enjoyed it in the kind of lighter end of the spectrum. Same thing with this Beauty Pie Everyday Great Skin Concealer. This is the shade Ivory. I actually only use this for blemishes on my neck because my neck is a lot lighter than my face, and the spot concealer I have from Makeup Forever, the full cover concealer, the one that I had was just way too dark. So this is the perfect shade match for my neck, if that gives you a good understanding of how different my hands, my neck, and my face are. But during one of the Sephora sales, I did end up picking up the Makeup Forever full cover concealer in, I can't remember what the shade is. Porcelain, I think, is the lightest shade, and that's a great shade match for my neck. And that also is more budge proof and has more coverage than this, so I'm gonna be passing this one on. I also decided to declutter the Milk Makeup Future Fluid Concealer. This is in 8C. I don't know, I liked it at first, but then over time, I started buying more and more concealers, and this just was not being used at all. I really don't like this pointy applicator under the eyes. Something about it just really annoys me. It is a pretty good shade match for me, I will say that. It looks a little bit peachy on my hand. Not sure if you're gonna be able to see that on camera. The undertones might be a little bit washed out, but I also just stopped reaching for it because it gets so messy along here where all of this product gathers. It was a very strange design choice for me. The formula itself is really nice. I do like that it's got a semi-matte finish, but it didn't seem to be drying under my eyes at all. The reason I really stopped reaching for the formula though, and I think you can see as I'm rubbing it in that it is a better match, but ultimately this is actually a really thin spreadable concealer, and I just felt that as I was blending it, I would just lose the coverage, and I could never really get it to full coverage, which is what I want. I look for concealers that are full coverage, that have the texture of an eye cream, that are kind of sticky and tacky so that the coverage stays in place, and ultimately something that is just like super thin and spreadable like this just doesn't give me the coverage that I'm looking for. And recently I got this package from YSL, which was lovely. They sent me their Touche Éclat concealers, and these are the shades 1 and 2.5. So I'll just show you what they look like. One is way too light for me, although I liked the pink undertones. So this is the shade 1, which you can see is very light and very pink. And then this is the shade 2.5, which I remember being very yellow. See, I don't know, can you see how the product like dried since I last used it? Like that's the texture of how it looks under my eyes, which is so interesting because this was such a like a cult classic product. Yeah, you can see 2.5 is very, very yellow compared to 1. For whatever reason, I just find that this is super drying and emphasizes texture under my eyes. So maybe when this came out like well over a decade ago at this point, I mean, God, was it like 2 decades ago? I have no concept of time. Maybe this was super innovative and that's why it was such a, you know, a cult classic product, but I'm really hoping you're gonna be able to pick up on how much this is emphasizing texture on my hand. Let me see. Yeah, you can really see there. That's kind of how it looks under my eyes. So the Touche Éclat just sadly is not for me. And now let's move on to cheek products. And by the way, I always get questions on my rings. These thin little rings that I always wear are from a brand called Priscilla Ma. I'll link the website in the description box below. I don't have an affiliate code or anything like that. I think it's just a one-woman shop in LA or the Bay Area, but they make some of my favorite jewelry and the quality is fantastic. So in case you were wondering, Priscilla Ma. Moving on to blush. I had only kept one Say Do blush in the shade Dreamy because I just adore this color. Unfortunately though, this formula just fades so fast on me and it looks really, really wet on the cheeks, just not my kind of preference. Oh, but this shade is the color of my dreams. It's the exact same shade as my favorite Fit Glow lip serum, which is the shade Gospel. It is a cross between a pink and a berry and it leans on the warm side. It's basically just the color that I wish my cheeks naturally flushed. It's the color I wish my lips naturally flushed. It just makes me feel so fresh and so youthful. Unfortunately, this literally fades in 10 minutes. Like I have to layer it and layer it and layer it, then it fades and I apply more and it just absolutely disappears from my skin. And given that I do prefer something that has less of a dewy finish, it's just something that I ended up not reaching for. And since I do think it's still, you know, it hasn't expired yet, I'd like to pass this on so someone else can get better use out of it. And as just a little side note about Say, I have such a love-hate relationship with their products. Everything they make is so glowy, so wet looking, so reflective that it just doesn't make sense to me as a cohesive brand. They did come out with a powder, but even that powder wasn't mattifying enough for me. It kind of almost like emphasized glow. Recently, they just came out with their glow sculpts, and I actually really like them because they're a cream powder formula. Finally, something that isn't super, super dewy from Say. So I'll be keeping the glow sculpts and I'll be passing along the dew blushes. Okay, now I have some potted cream blushes. And let's start with Phytosurgence. So I love the shade Simmer and I love the Phytosurgence cream blush formula. They started doing this really quickly, and the brand says that all you have to do is just kind of break it up on the back of your hand and then it's totally fine. It hasn't expired, there's no mold or anything like that. And so as you can see here, you are left with a smooth finish and it looks absolutely beautiful on the skin. These are just some of my favorite formulas. It's just more of a psychological thing for me. First of all, if I have to put a product on the back of my hand in order to use it, that's the quickest way for me to not use something, because I do my makeup extremely fast in the morning. My job is insane these days. I'm working crazy hours. I barely have time to apply makeup, let alone film content anymore. And so I want something that I can kind of just like dip in, swipe on my face and go. And psychologically, anytime I open this and I see it, I'm just like, I don't want to deal with it. But I don't know, now that I'm looking at it on the back of my hand, it is so incredibly beautiful. I might just put this to the side and see if maybe I can like dig my fingers in there. Maybe I can like, I don't know, make it a little bit smoother again if I just break it up and I smush everything around in there and then I clean it up later. So I just tried to break up all of the little, butters or waxes that had hardened, and this does look a little bit more appealing to me than it did before. So maybe I'll hold on to it and just see if I start reaching for it again, because I do love the way this looks on the cheeks. And then actually the other day I was looking for Fume and I forgot that I had decluttered it because I had been reaching for Evaporate more. Evaporate is a really beautiful kind of peachy, tan, beigey shade, but I found myself wanting to go back to Fume. However, we have the same situation for Fume. I just don't want to constantly have to like rework all those little butters and waxes back together. And I don't live in a cold climate. Like, it's super hot where my makeup is right now, and yet it still looks like this. And when I open it, this never looks appealing to me, Like, I don't look at this and say like, ooh, I want to put that on my face. Yeah, like that whole first top layer feels really hard. I just wish they could find a way to stabilize their products. Psychologically, my brain doesn't want to reach for it when it looks like that, because it does look like it's gross or moldy, but really it's just, the stabilization of the formula. So maybe working it back in like that is gonna help. Hi, so I just talked to the founder of Phytosurgence, and they said that since I purchased these Skin Spark blush bombs about a year or a year and a half ago, they've since tweaked the formula a few times and added different gelling agents so that the waxes don't crystallize as easily. They said that if you haven't touched the blushes in a while, they still can crystallize a little bit. Just swirl your finger in there and melt it back down and it should be fine. But I'm gonna declutter these, but when they come out with a line of cream bronzers soon, I'm gonna repurchase Fume and Evaporate, and then I'll be able to review that formula for you. And what I like about Fume is it's like kind of the love child between Condensate, Simmer, and Evaporate. It's definitely got this like muted mauve-y, dusty quality like Condensate, but there's a little pink in there, and it's also a little bit skin colory, so it's kind of like Evaporate. It's just the perfect everyday blush shade. So I think I might actually pull these out of my collection. As you can see, they do have a dewy finish, and so they fade very quickly from my cheeks, but they're just so incredibly beautiful and they feel so creamy and nice. It's really hard to pass these on. I'm so curious, who remembers me using this on channel? Who's been here since the beginning? I filmed a blush tag video at this current house, actually, outside on my porch. I think I don't know, maybe in 2020, and this was my favorite blush that year. It looks like I've never touched this, but I swear to God I have. I used to use this all the time. I just felt like it was maybe a little bit too peachy for me. You can see this has an incredibly glossy finish, and you would think that I would hate that because I don't really like dewy products, but somehow on the skin, it's like sticky, so it actually does stay in place versus something like the Phytosurgence blushes that are very, very slippy and very buttery. This is really sticky, and so it's actually quite pigmented, and despite the glossiness, because it's so sticky, it stays in place. And now I have myself wondering why I wanted to declutter this in the first place. And I can't believe, for a clean beauty product, it really does not look expired at all. It doesn't smell any different. So I'm gonna put that back. And I think what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna keep these two. I'm gonna keep Phytosurgence Fume and I didn't say what this was. It's the the Air Perez Carrot Color Pot in Harmony. I'm gonna keep these two. I have so many pink blushes already that I think I'm gonna pass on Phytosurgent Simmer, and these are the ones that I'm gonna keep. I also have this Beauty Pie Super Cheek in Sexy Berry. I love this color. I really liked these at first, but then I just felt like over time, as I was trying more and more cream formulas, it just felt a little bit difficult to blend on the cheeks. As you can see, it does have a more matte finish. It kind of looks silicone primery. You can see on the back of my hand here. I love that color. It's so beautiful. Come on, you can tell. I love those kind of pinky berry shades where they're not a pink, but they're not a purple berry. There's some red in there. It's like the blood is rushing to your face. It's the perfect kind of flushed color. And I feel like that's what makes people look so alive, is when their skin is flushed. But unfortunately, I just found these to be a little patchy. I think you can see that on the back of my hand. So for me, I'm gonna pass it on. Next, I have this Bubble and Elsa Hosk collab, which is their cushion blush in the shade Cherry Blossom. This is a great formula, and it actually works really well with this little powder puff. The problem for me is that it's just frankly too light for my skin. I'll take some on the powder puff, put it on the back of my hand, and I think you can see that is just incredibly light. And so I'll put it on my cheeks, and then in like 10 minutes, it's gone from my face. So this just doesn't work for me, but this formula itself is stunning because it has a beautiful satin natural finish. So if they came out with some colors that were just, like a little bit darker than this, I think that would be great and I would really like it. I had the opposite problem with the Live Tinted Hue Beam. This one is just too dark and too pigmented for me. When I first got it, I loved the colors. I was so enamored by swirling these together. I'll show you on the back of my hand all the different colors, and then I'll swirl them for you. So that's what they look like. You can use them individually if you want, as a bronzer, as a blush, and then I'll show you what they look like swatched fully. It's so incredibly pigmented. There's also a lot of shimmer in it, and it's also very chalky. You can see it like fell all over the towel here. It's super chalky, so what would happen is even when I used my absolute fluffiest, most sheer brush that I possibly could, I had to really wipe a lot on the back of my hand and be really careful when applying it to my face. So, I do think this is better suited for people with medium to deep skin. And in that case, I think this would be an incredible product. So I feel bad messing this up for anyone who's gonna get it, but it is kind of already messed up. So I'm gonna swirl them all together so you can kind of see what it looks like. So that's what it looks like when it's actually on your face, and in a heavy swatch, obviously, it wouldn't be that dark. So it becomes almost like a more terracotta version of the original MAC Warm Soul. So it is great that you have all these different ways that you can use it as a bronzer, as a blush, eyeshadow, whatever you want. But unfortunately, it's just too chalky and too deep and too pigmented for my personal preferences. Shit, now this towel is gonna be like super dirty the whole video. I'm so sorry. Next, M Cosmetics actually sent me their entire line of serum color drops. It just does not work for me. These are way too dewy, way too sheer. They did add some other colors, and they added some pigments they added additional pigment to existing shades. And this was my favorite shade out of all of them. It is the color Forbidden Fruit. If you're sensing a theme here, that's because I do love colors that are this beautiful, rich kind of berry with different undertones. I love a purple berry. I love a red berry, like a red pinky berry. And this for me would be more of like a brown berry. Also, as you can see, like it's not very easy to pick up product. I don't love the design of the packaging. This thing falls out really easily. So I think this would be better suited to someone who doesn't mind their blush fading throughout the day, who really loves a dewy, wet looking kind of finish and, a sheer blush. But for me personally, this is just way too wet looking and it fades too quickly, and the packaging just doesn't fit very well in my drawers. Next, I have the Youthforia Chemical Reaction. I don't know. Everything else under there is way too small for me to read it. It's the color changing blush oil that they formulated so that you could sleep in it, so that it's like skincare and not makeup. For me personally, while I think this is beautiful, it's that pH adjusting product that has red 27. This is what the Fenty Matchstick in Strawberry Pop is doing for people. And I think this is a stunning color. I love the way that it looks, but it is an oil, and so it feels like an oil. And as someone whose skin gets oily when I wear makeup, it's just a bit of a disaster for me. Also, I just found that no matter what I did with this product, it lifted my foundation underneath. I tried my fingers, I tried a brush, I tried a sponge. I just couldn't figure it out. So I feel like it's better suited for someone who really wears a super, super light coverage base. And I believe it stains as well. Yeah, so if I remove the product, it does stain the cheek, which is really nice. And I've only used this 3 times, so I think someone else could really like this. Sadly, I'm gonna declutter the Flower Beauty Gel Crush Lip and Cheek. This is like my ideal color. It's so freaking pretty. Oh, look at that. It's like a warm corally pink. Oh, I just love that color for summer. It also has a really nice kind of fruity smell that I love. Unfortunately, it's too dewy and it just fades so fast from my skin. You know, when I apply this, it looks gorgeous at first. And then when my skin starts getting kind of oily throughout the day, it is just virtually gone from my face. So I'm sure you're sensing a theme here that super wet looking, dewy, sheer products are just generally not gonna work for me. And I need to be a lot better about what I put in my collection, because I'll try something like this and I'll think, oh wow, this is so beautiful. I love the color. I love the way that it looks. And then when I actually put it in my drawers, I end up never reaching for it because it just fades so fast from my skin. So I'm definitely being a lot pickier now about what can actually make it into my drawers. And lastly, in today's declutter, we have 3 shades of the Wander Beauty On the Glow Blush and Illuminators, and I kept the other shades. Strawberry Fields is one of my all-time favorite colors. I love that one, so I definitely kept that. They all have the same highlighter shade, and I'm getting rid of Bare because on my skin, it's just too peachy. I think you can see there, it really does look quite peach, and that's just not really my vibe. The illuminator on the end though is really pretty. It's just a stunning color and it's super metallic. Yeah, so zooming you in here, that's Bare, and then on the right is the gorgeous highlighter shade. Oh no, I grabbed the wrong one. Okay, I definitely did not mean to declutter Strawberry Fields. This is like my favorite color. Again, can you sense a theme? I love a pinky berry, what can I say? Definitely not decluttering this. But I am gonna declutter Sienna Sunset. Again, just a little too orangey for me. It just doesn't look very natural on my skin because I have cool pink undertones. I think this would be a really natural kind of my skin but better color for someone with warmer skin or slightly deeper skin. So I'm gonna pass that one on. That's it for this declutter. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for the next ones in this series. You'll have my eyeshadow declutter and my lip declutter as well. And I am almost done gathering all the products for my epic best and worst lip balm video. So stay tuned for that one as well. And wherever you are, I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.